Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar and workshop series conducted by TCS in lieu of the upcoming SCS exams happening in February 2026. As you know, my name is Nicholas and I'm the lead tutor and evaluator for SCS at TCS. So let's look at the session plan. First things first, I'm going to take you through the F3 syllabus so that you'd understand which elements can be tested at the examination. And also, I'm going to conduct an F3 masterclass. I taught you answering technique in the third webinar. So I'm going to, reiterate the same elements in a nutshell because some of you might not have attended the third webinar or missed it. So don't worry. I'm going to first things first teach you the answering technique in a nutshell and then direct your attention towards one of the questions taken from our first mock exam, which is tied to debt covenants. And as usual, I'm going to conduct a Q&A towards the very end of today's session. So let me quickly remind you of the upcoming workshops we have scheduled for you. So similar to what I'm going to do in today's workshop, I'm going to conduct workshops focused on your P3 and E3 syllabi in the upcoming weekends, and also in the final workshop, which happens just 2 or 3 days before the examination. I'm going to share last minute tips with you to make sure that you are capable of walking into the exam with a high level of positivity, because as per the CIMA examiner, if you believe in yourself, you can easily pass this examination. All right, so before we get into the nitty-gritties, let me quickly remind you of how you should conduct your preparations in the upcoming weeks. In last week's webinar, I shared a study plan with you. You have enough and more time to conduct your preparation focused on the 6 mocks, which we have already shared with you. And when attempting each mock exam, your objective should be to stick to these 3 steps. So step number 1 is to practice each mock exam under exam conditions. The prime objective of doing so should be to practice your answering, time management, and stress management techniques. So don't try to learn theory and application, or don't try to test your knowledge when practicing each mock exam. Instead, as I mentioned earlier, the objective should be to practice your answering, time management, and stress management techniques when attempting each mock under exam conditions via our exam platform. So that is your first step. And the second step is to learn focused on the same mock exam. So you can easily learn when you watch master classes, which are intended to teach you theory and application. So you will, understand what is contained within master classes, or how we conduct master classes when I take you through the question tied to debt covenants. So similarly, after attempting each mock exam, you are supposed to watch the master classes to learn theory and application. And once you have learned theory and application, once you have figured out how you should have structured your answers, what type of points you should have included in your answers, then your preparations should not stop there. Instead, you have to take steps to revise by redeveloping answer plans on your own. When you are redeveloping answer plans, you are trying to cement your knowledge because you have learned something via the master classes. You have to check and see whether you are in a position to replicate TCS's answer plans on your own. So with this in mind, you have to redevelop answer plans on your own, which is the best type of revision out there. So if you stick to this 3-step process, you are not just attempting the 6 mock exams, you are going through each mock exam thrice before walking into the exam, which will ensure that you pass comfortably. Why am I saying this? Because you are taking steps when you're practicing each mock exam, you are taking steps to fine tune your answering, time management, and stress management techniques, which are crucial at your real examination. If you want to pass comfortably at your real exam, you should structure your answers properly, manage your time appropriately, and at the same time manage stress levels. You are practicing these 3 techniques whenever you are practicing each mock exam. And also you are learning theory and application via the master classes. So you are focusing on the same mock exam. So we have made sure to cover all syllabus areas across the 6 mocks which we have developed. That's why we have made sure to cover 63 subtasks in total in across the mock exams which we have shared with you. So you are learning theoretical concepts covering the entire syllabus, and at the same time you are figuring out how to apply this conceptual knowledge when developing your answers. And also you are taking steps to redevelop answer plans focused on the same mock exams. When you stick to this process, you will cement your understanding, and this will ensure that you know how to approach each type of question in a successful manner. That is why most of our students who stick to our study plan, stick to this three-step process, end up passing the exam comfortably. If you stick to this process, you can score easily. You can score 90 plus marks at your examination. So I hope you will stick to this process. And I shared a study plan with you last week, so I hope you will stick to it. You have enough and more time. If you master each mock exam in this process, you can easily pass your upcoming SCS exam. All right. So having said that, let me take you through your F3 syllabus. So I'm going to direct your attention towards the syllabus coverage document, which we have already shared with you. Let's try to figure out what is covered under your F3 syllabus and what you have to go through in order to, be fully prepared for your examination. All right. So looking at your F3 syllabus, which is tied to finance strategy, your knowledge concerning financing options, especially tied to debt versus equity, will be tested at the examination. So after this workshop, I'm going to, via the WhatsApp group, I'm going to share a recorded version of a previous workshop which we conducted, focused on the exams which happened in November 2025. As you know, the November 2025 exams are based on your same pre-scene, which is based on Cewmlator. So I've conducted a masterclass concerning this element, financing options, thereby explaining or conducting an in-depth explanation of how to tackle a question to do with debt and equity, which is heavily tested at your examination. And so you have to be conversant about this element. Also, you should know what to look into when it comes to demonstrating creditworthiness to lenders. So if we are seeking debt finance, then we have to demonstrate our creditworthiness to lenders, especially if we are, reaching out to lenders with whom we have not worked so far. So let's assume that we are expanding internationally to an unknown region or a region in which we have not operated previously. So when opting for this type of an expansion, we might have to seek loans. And when doing so, in order to avoid our exposure to foreign exchange risks, it makes sense to seek finance from local banks. So when doing so, companies should demonstrate their creditworthiness, and when demonstrating creditworthiness, we have to focus on several different elements. So all these things you have to be conversant with, and also you should know how to handle a rights issue. So an alternative to debt financing is opting for equity financing. And when opting for equity financing, the easiest approach is to opt for a rights issue. So you should know how to handle a rights issue, and also how to deal with debt covenants. In today's masterclass, I'm going to cover this element tied to debt covenants, because whenever we are seeking additional loans or additional debt financing, we have to fall in line with the needs of the creditors. We have to, make sure that additional funding is aligned with the existing contracts which we have signed with our lenders or creditors. So your knowledge concerning debt covenants can be tested. And also, there could be a situation where Cewmlator wants to acquire a company. When doing so, it's essential that we value the company appropriately. It could be a public limited company, or it could be a private company. It could be a startup, or a company which is at the maturity stage. Irrespective of the size and the type of the company, you should have a good understanding of how to value each company. So your knowledge concerning company valuation can be tested. And also, if we opt for additional dividend payments, there's a way in which we should tackle this element. If not, it will lead to us losing money, and at the same time, dissatisfying shareholders or other stakeholders. So your knowledge concerning how to pay additional dividends and how it impacts the internals of our company, especially the financial situation, will be tested. And also, just like how you have to deal with an additional dividend payment properly, you have to be conversant of how a dividend cancellation might impact us as a company, both financially and non-financially. So both these angles are covered within our mock exams, and both these angles can be tested at your exam. And also your knowledge concerning integrated reporting, which is tied to the 6 capitals framework, will definitely be tested, because Cewmlator believes in sustainability. There's a sustainability report which appears within your current pre-scene. So given these points, definitely your knowledge concerning integrated reporting will be tested, which is based on the 6 capitals framework. Also, you have to be conversant about how the share price is going to react when we are faced with various different types of risks, when we are trying to pursue certain strategic options. And also, if our beta value changes, you should know how it impacts our share price. And also, you should have the capability to recommend ways in which we can recover the share price if we are if the share price is deemed to drop in the future due to some type of a risk we are exposed to, due to something wrong within our company, or due to the beta increasing, then the share price might drop. If so, you should have the capability to recommend ways in which we can, or we should, recover our share price. So all these elements which are covered within your F3 syllabus can be tested, and all these elements are covered within the 6 mocks which we have shared with you. All right. So having said that, let's move towards the masterclass. So before I take you to the question tied to debt covenants, let me quickly remind you of the steps which you need to adhere to when developing your answers. So I explained these steps in depth in the 3rd webinar, in which I taught you an answering and time management technique. If you missed it, please go watch the recorded version, which can be accessed via our student dashboard as well as our YouTube handle. So before I conduct the masterclass, let me, in a nutshell, remind you of how you should structure your answers appropriately. So as you know, in each section, the total time allocation is 60 minutes. So let's try to figure out how you should manage your time, and at the same time, what you should do within these 60 minutes. So in the first 5 minutes of each section, you are supposed to read through the entire scenario. And when you are reading through the entire scenario, if you take more than 7 minutes, then your reading speed is not up to standard. So you need to take steps to practice your reading. So on a daily basis, dedicate 30 to 60 minutes of your time and read anything you want, because without practicing reading, you are not in a position to read through the entire scenario within just 5 to 7 minutes. If you go beyond 7 minutes to read the scenario, then definitely you are going to lose out marks. Why am I saying this? Because when you take more than 7 minutes to read through the scenario, you are going to mismanage your time. When you mismanage your time, then definitely when you run out of time, you will develop half-hearted answers, or answers which are rushed. So when this is the case, you end up losing a lot of marks. So it's essential that you practice your reading speed. If not, you are going to lose marks at your exam. So first things first, dedicate 5 minutes of your time to read the scenario. Once you are done with it, then before you develop the answer plan, you are supposed to reiterate each requirement in your own words in a simple manner or in a concise manner. The objective of simplifying each requirement before you develop the answer plan is to gain an in-depth understanding of what the requirement is. So I explained or I took you through the examiner's comments in last week's webinar, in the 4th webinar. And when taking you through the examiner's comments, I hope you can remember, the examiner says that if you are to develop good answers, you should develop answers which are totally aligned with each requirement. So most students, right after reading through the scenario, they start typing their final answer, and halfway through, they realize that their answer is not really aligned with the requirement. So if your answer is not aligned with the requirement, or if you are not addressing the task, then you are not going to get any marks at your examination. So it's essential that you gain an in-depth understanding of what each requirement is. With this objective in mind, you are supposed to simplify each requirement in your own words in a simpler manner. So when I'm conducting the masterclass, I'm going to explain how we are supposed to do it in a practical manner in a little while. And also, once you have understood each requirement, then you have to come up with the headings and subheadings. And the headings should be in bold and underlined format, and subheadings should be in bold format. So the headings should be aligned with the number of subtasks which appear within a certain section. So let's assume within a certain section, there are just 2 subtasks. Then in your answer, there should be 2 main headings. And alternatively, let's assume that in a certain section, there are 3 subtasks. If so, in your answer, there should be 3 main headings. So based on the number of subtasks which appear within a section, you need to come up with main headings, which should be in bold and underlined format. Never name a subtask or a section, because the examiner is trying to replicate a real-life corporate environment. So at office, you are not going to name a section. Instead, when developing a response in an email format, you will come up with main headings and subheadings. So that's exactly what you can see here. In this section, I'm on section number 3. There are 3 subtasks. So this is my first main heading, which is focused on the answer concerning subtask A, or the first subtask, which is in bold and underline format. And you can also see second main heading, which is again in bold and underline format. And also you'd see a third main heading. Yes, exactly. That's what you can see in here. All my 3 main headings are in bold and underline format. And I've developed a main heading focused on each subtask. And as I mentioned earlier, you can use subheadings as well, as and when necessary. So if you feel that within a certain subtask, you need to fraction out your answer, then you can utilize subheadings, and each of these subheadings should be in bold format. So in the first section, I've divided up my answer into 2 main elements. And for each area, I've come up with a subheading, which is in bold format. All right. So those are your headings and subheadings. Once you have stipulated your headings and subheadings, then you should develop the answer plan on the answer screen itself. And you should dedicate a maximum of 30 minutes to develop the answer plan. I don't mind even if you take 35 minutes to develop the answer plan, as long as you are capable of developing answer plans covering all subtasks. So I took you through section 3 of the first mock exam, which we have already shared with you. So in section 3, there are 3 subtasks. So within 30 to 35 minutes, you should have the capability to develop the answer plan covering all 3 subtasks. And when doing so, when developing these answer plans, you should know how many points you should include under each subtask. So you are supposed to look at the weightages provided towards the end of each section or end of each subtask. That's exactly what you can see here. Oops, if you look at the question, where is the question? Give me a second, please, folks. Someone's mic is on. All right, I'm looking for the question. Give me a second, please, folks. All right, folks. So as you can see, at the very end of each subtask, you see a percentage. So the percentage or the weightage provided for subtask A is 50%. The weightage provided for subtask B is 30%. And the weightage provided for subtask C is 20%. So these weightages give you an indication of how many marks are dedicated for each subtask. So based on these weightages, you are supposed to determine how many marks are allocated for each subtask. When you determine the mark allocations, you can easily figure out how many points you should include under each subtask. So that's exactly what you can see in here. We are in section number 3. The weightage provided for the first subtask is 50%. The second subtask is 30 and the third 20%. So that's exactly what you can see here, 50%, 30% and 20%. And as you know, each section is dedicated with 50 marks. So 50% of 50 marks come up to 25 marks in total. 30% of 50 marks come up to 15 marks in total. And 20% of 50 marks come up to 10 marks in total. So now you know the mark allocations. You figured out the mark allocations based on the weightages. Then let's try to figure out how many points you should include under each subtask. So let's focus on subtask A. The weightage provided is 50%. Based on that, 25 marks are dedicated for the first subtask. So as I mentioned earlier, each valid point carry 2 or 3 marks. So divide 25 by 3, then you get an answer which is 8. And again, divide 25 by 2, then you get an answer which is 12. So if you include 8 to 12 valid points for the first subtask, you are going to get full marks. Why 8 to 12 points? Why did I divide 25 by 3 and again divide 25 by 2? Given the fact that each valid point carry 2 or 3 marks. Similarly, let's look at how many points you should include to score 15 marks. So as I mentioned earlier, divide 15 by 3, you get an answer which is 5. And again, divide 15 by 2, you get an answer which is 7.5, or you can round it up to 8. So if you include 5 to 8 valid points under the second subtask, you will score full marks. And similarly, to score 10 marks, let's try to understand how many points you should include. So divide 10 by 3, you get an answer which is 3. Then again, divide 10 by 2, you get an answer which is 5. So if you include 3 to 5 valid points for the final subtask, you are going to score full marks. All right. So before you develop the answer plan, you are supposed to determine based on the weightages how many marks are dedicated for each subtask. When you know the mark allocations, then you are supposed to work out how many points you should include within your answer. This can be easily achieved by dividing the marks dedicated towards each subtask by 3, and again dividing the same marks by 2. Then you will easily understand how many points you should include in each subtask to gain full marks. All right, so that's exactly what's highlighted here in here. So you are supposed to determine mark allocations based on the weightages, and each valid point carry 2 or 3 marks per point. And also, when it comes to developing the answer, develop it on the answer screen. So within 30 to 35 minutes, you should be capable of developing the answer plan focused on all subtasks which appear within a section. So when you are trying this for the first time, you are definitely going to run out of time. Although I'm asking you to develop answer plans covering all subtasks which appear within a section within just 30 to 35 minutes, when you try to do it for the first time, you will take 45 to 50 minutes. That's quite all right. With practice, you will significantly improve this capability. And by the time you are attempting mock number 4, you will understand the fact that you have the capability of developing answer plans within just 30 minutes, covering the entire section. And once you have developed an answer plan, so your answer plan should look something like this. It should be a small. This should not carry paragraphs or sentences and sentences, or paragraphs and paragraphs of information. Instead, this should be kept simple as much as possible, because you are trying to plan. You are not trying to finalize your answer. Instead, you are planning. So when it comes to planning, come up with simple bullet points with the main intention of structuring your answer, building logic, and ensuring that you are developing an answer which is totally aligned with each requirement. And the final step is to expand the answer plan. So once you have developed the answer plans, utilizing the remaining 20 to 25 minutes, you are supposed to expand the answer plan in paragraph form. So your final answer should look something like this. If you look at this answer, the entire answer is in paragraph form. The answer is not in bullet points. The bullet points are there when it comes to structuring your answer, when you are planning your answer. But once you have planned out your answer, when it comes to typing or finalizing your answer, you should develop an answer which is in paragraph form. So based on the number of points you have decided to include in your answer, you need to come up with the same amount of paragraphs in your answer. Don't write the entire answer in one single paragraph. If you do so, you are not actually helping the marker, because when you write like this, when you listen to the CIMA examiner and divide paragraphs based on the number of points which you intend to include under each subtask, then the marker can easily count and see how many points you have included in the answer. And out of these points, which are accurate and which are inaccurate, the marker can easily spot these things. And when you do so, when you are assisting the marker, you will be in the good books of your marker. So let's assume you score 77 or 78. Once the marks are finalized, then if you're on the good books of the marker might give you the additional 2 or 3 marks, which will ensure that you pass this examination. So it's essential that you stick to this process, and just because you know these techniques, you are not going to implement them successfully at your exam for the first time. Instead, when attempting each mock exam, you are supposed to keep practicing these techniques over and over. That is why when explaining the 3-step process when it comes to mastering each mock exam, I said that the objective of practicing mocks under exam conditions is to practice your answering, time management, and stress management techniques. The objective is not to really improve your knowledge. Knowledge improvements can be handled when you watch the master classes and take steps to redevelop answer plans on your own. All right, so that's the answering technique which you need to adhere to when developing answers. I explain these things again, which were explained previously in the 3rd webinar, because some of you might not have attended the 3rd webinar. All right, so this is what you need to do, and let's try to figure out how you should approach a question tied to debt covenants. All right, so we are in section number 3 of mock exam 1. The time allocation is 60 minutes. Before I take you to the question tied to debt covenants, let me quickly take you through the first subtask, because the question tied to debt covenants appear within the 2nd subtask, but there is a connection between subtasks A and B. If you do not understand what is highlighted in subtask A, then you won't understand the logic tied to subtask B. All right, so let's try to figure out what the company is up to. A month later, you receive the following email from the finance director. I have attached a scanned copy of a quotation that has been circulated to the board. So let's look at the quotation. So this is a quotation which we have received from VS Crow. And as per the quotation, we are supposed to spend 605 million C dollars. This is not our functional currency. This is in C dollar terms. So this is a foreign company, and this company, when looking at this $605 million, it comprises of 2 main elements. We are supposed to spend 600 million C dollars to set up and integrate an escrow system. And then there's an annual escrow management fee. So once you set up a certain system, you have to keep maintaining it. So for maintenance, on an annual basis, we are supposed to pay 5 million C dollars. So that makes up $605 million. So the first subtask highlights a situation where we are trying to invest on a certain software, and we are supposed to spend 605 million in C dollar terms to purchase this software. So VS Crow has an excellent reputation for the provision of escrow services. So this is an escrow software. The company is based in Zealand, whose currency is the C dollar. VS Crow insists on being paid in its home currency because it is stronger than the D dollar. The exchange rate is presently 5 D dollars equal 1 C dollar. So the C dollar is extremely strong. Why are we saying this? Given the fact that in order to purchase a C dollar, we have to pay 5 D dollars, which indicates the fact that the C dollar is much stronger compared to our home currency, which is the D dollar. I'm interested in your opinion of these matters. You are supposed to recommend with reasons how we should finance the initial escrow setup and integration cost of 600 million C dollars and the annual escrow management fee of C dollars 5 million. So I've explained this answer. I've conducted a masterclass focused on this first subtask in the F3 masterclass in the F3 masterclass, which I conducted a month back, focused on November 2025 examinations. So after this session, I'm going to share the recorded version so that you can watch and learn how to deal with a question tied to debt and equity or evaluating funding options. So we are supposed to make a huge investment. In C dollar terms, it comes up to $605 million. So how are we supposed to fund it? That is what this question, the first subtask, is all about. And aligned or attached to the first subtask, the second subtask tests your understanding about debt covenants. The covenants on our existing loans forbid us to exceed a gearing of 43%. So as per our existing contracts, which we have signed with creditors, which are also known as debt covenants, we are not supposed to exceed a gearing of 43%. The board does not intend to issue shares at present as well. So we are facing an investment. We are supposed to invest $605 million in C dollar terms. And when doing so, we have two options at our disposal. We can opt for a loan, or we can opt for debt, or we can opt for equity. When opting for equity, we can raise money by selling shares to the public. So if we opt for debt, our gearing is going to increase, because whenever a company takes on additional debt, gearing increases, and we should not go beyond 43% as per our existing debt covenants. And if with the additional debt, if gearing moves beyond 43%, then we have no other option but to raise the necessary money, which is tied to this investment, by selling shares to the public. However, as per this requirement, the board does not intend to issue shares at present. So when the board is not intending to sell shares to the public, the only option at our disposal is to opt for loan funding. However, if we opt for loans or if we opt for debt funding, our gearing will increase. And if it goes beyond 43%, it is going to dissatisfy our creditors, and we are going to breach our debt covenants or the agreements which we have signed with our existing creditors or finance providers. So let's look at the requirement. You are supposed to recommend with reasons how we should deal with the breach of our debt covenants if we borrow $600 million. All right. So I've read through the scenario, which is the first step. So similar to what I did, you are supposed to read through the entire scenario, you're covering all subtasks within just 5 to 7 minutes. After you are done with it, then in order to gain an in-depth understanding of what you're expected to achieve when it comes to developing your answer, you are supposed to reiterate each requirement in your own words in a concise manner. So let's look at how you should simplify this requirement in your own words. That's exactly what you can find within this answer plan. So we are in section number 3, subtask B. So the requirement goes as recommend with reasons how we should deal with the breach of our debt covenants if we borrow $600 million. So borrowing $600 million, how to deal with breach of debt covenants. So we are poised to borrow. We don't have any option but to borrow this money, which comes up to $600 million. And when borrowing this money, how should we deal with a breach of debt covenants if we are to breach, if we are poised to breach debt covenants? We have to do some calculations and see what the post-investment gearing is going to be, and see whether the post-investment gearing is going to be less than 43%, which is what our existing debt covenants expect us to maintain. All right, so I've simplified the requirement with the prime intention of gaining a clear understanding of what I'm supposed to cover within my answer. So borrowing $600 million, how to deal with the breach of debt covenants. And once you have understood the requirement clearly, then you are supposed to come up with headings and subheadings. So I'm going to come up with a main heading which reads as debt covenants, and this main heading should be in bold and underline format. And then right before I develop the answer plan, I'm supposed to understand how many points I should include within this answer. So the weightage provided is 30%. Based on that, 15 marks are dedicated for the second subtask. So let's try to understand how many points we should include to score 15 marks. So each valid point carry 2 or 3 marks. Therefore, divide 15 by 3, you get an answer which is 5. Again, divide 15 by 2, you get an answer which is 7.5. You can round it up to 8. So if you include 5 to 8 valid points within your answer, you are going to get full marks. So now we know how many points we should include within the answer. Then let's look at how you should structure, or what you should cover within your answer. All right, so let me scroll down to the relevant area. Before I take you to the relevant answer, in the previous subtask, in subtask A, since the question is tied to funding options, debt and equity, I've already worked out a post-investment gearing. So our pre-investment gearing, as per your pre-seen, as per your financial statements, was 41%. And if we include this investment, which comes up to 600 million in D dollar terms, and we have to think in terms of our home currency and see how much it is going to be in D dollar terms. So in C dollar terms, the investment is $600 million to purchase this escrow software. And in D dollar terms, as per the exchange rate, which is as per the question, the exchange rate is $5 equal 1 C dollar. So when we are borrowing 600 million C dollars, in D dollar terms, it comes up to 3 billion D dollars. So the investment is 600 million in C dollar terms. When you multiply this by 5, we get an answer which is 3 billion D dollars. And including this 3 billion D dollars, when we work out our post-investment gearing, as you know, gearing is computed as debt divided by debt plus equity multiplied by 100. So when we include this additional debt, $3 billion debt within the gearing calculation, we get an answer, a post-investment gearing, which is 44.5%. And this figure is well below the gearing ceiling of 50%. As you know, any company is supposed to maintain a gearing which is 50% or less. Why is this the case? Whenever a company exceeds the gearing threshold, or whenever ceiling rather, whenever a company exceeds a gearing of 50%, such a company is seen as a risky business in the eyes of lenders. So lenders or banks, when lending out money to a company which has a higher gearing, or a gearing which is higher than 50%, banks will seek additional returns because they are lending out to a risky business. And when lending out to a risky business, banks will seek higher returns. Therefore, they are going to charge us an additional interest rate. So if a company can borrow $3 billion at an interest of 8%, for instance, let's assume there's a company which has a gearing ratio which is less than 50%, and this company is borrowing $3 billion, then the loan interest or the finance cost is going to be 8%. Let's assume that. And compared to this company, let's assume another business which carries a gearing rate which is above 50% and is also trying to borrow $3 billion. The banks are going to charge 10%, 11%, or 12% more. Why is this the case, given the fact that such a business is considered as risky in the eyes of lenders? All right. So if you look at the post-investment gearing, it is just 44.5%. So this is well below the gearing ceiling of 50%, which indicates the fact that banks are not going to charge us additional interest when opting for this loan. All right, so that's the logic behind the first subtask. However, as per the second subtask, our existing covenants forbid us to exceed a gearing of 43%. So if you look at our existing debt covenants, although the best practice is to manage a gearing which is 50% or less, as per the contracts which we have signed with creditors, or as per the contracts which we have signed with our existing lenders, we are supposed to maintain a gearing of 43%. When we are supposed to maintain a gearing of 43%, if we opt for this loan, which amounts to $3 billion, our gearing is going to increase to 44.5%. So we are poised to exceed our gearing rate which we have agreed with our creditors. So we are poised to breach our debt covenants. So the logic behind this second subtask is a situation where if we opt for this $3 billion loan, we are going to breach our debt covenants, because as per our debt covenants, we are supposed to maintain a gearing ratio of 43%. However, when we work out the post-investment gearing, it comes up to 44.5%, which goes beyond the agreed gearing rate, which we have agreed with our creditors or finance providers or lenders. All right. So your requirement is to recommend with reasons how we should deal with the breach of our debt covenants. So you already know that we are poised to breach the debt covenants. So you are supposed to recommend how we should deal with these debt covenant breaches. All right, so let's look at how we should structure your answer. All right, so I've when starting my answer, I have mentioned the fact that we should not violate covenants without seeking approval from our creditors or finance providers. So when we are seeking for loans, definitely large companies sign debt covenants with finance providers or creditors. However, when we want to grow our business, there could be a situation where we want to take on additional loans. When doing so, any company might pose a threat of breaching debt covenants. So the best way to manage such a situation is not to blindly breach the debt covenants, but to seek approval from creditors before we opt for additional loans. Because if a company breaches the debt covenants, then such a company is supposed to return the funds immediately to the creditors. So let's assume Cewmlator, without informing the creditors or seeking approval from the creditors, go ahead with this loan funding amounting to $3 billion. And when the creditors get to know about it, when they know for a fact that we have breached the debt covenants which we have signed already, these creditors will seek an immediate return of funds. So legally, we have signed an agreement with our creditors, and if we breach this agreement, we are supposed to return the cash which we have borrowed from our creditors. And when we are trying to return the cash, we might not have the necessary cash flow with us. When this is the case, creditors will seize our assets. Even after seizing our assets, if creditors cannot raise the necessary funds, if they cannot recover the entire amounts of money which they had lent to us, then they will take action to dissolve the company. And when we dissolve the company, then our company will cease to exist. So in order to avoid such a situation, where the creditors are trying to seize our assets or pushing for company dissolution, we have to always make sure that we seek approval from our creditors if we figure out that due to us taking on additional debt, we are poised to breach debt covenants. So we should not blindly opt for loans. Instead, we should work out our post-investment gearing and see whether we are falling in line with our debt covenants. If not, we have to seek approval from creditors before seeking for additional loans in the future. And also, when seeking approval from creditors, Cewmlator can explain the issues of enforcing debt covenants. So if we breach these covenants, and if creditors enforce these covenants, this leads to negative publicity because when the market gets to know for a fact that the creditors are trying to seize our assets, or when the creditors are trying to push for a dissolution of the company, or when the creditors are asking us to liquidate the business, then this leads to negative publicity, and this negative publicity will reflect on our share prices. People or the investors especially will end up selling our shares. When this is the case, this won't be really good for the company. So when these creditors are trying to recover the cash due, this negative publicity, when this leads to a situation where shareholders end up selling our stocks, these creditors might not be in a position to recover the cash due fully. And also, when this is the case, these creditors, as I mentioned earlier, will ask us to liquidate the assets. And when we liquidate our assets, it might only cover a small portion of outstanding debt. So when we breach a debt covenant, creditors will try to recover the money due by asking us to return the funds. When we do not have the necessary financial resources, they will seize our assets. Even after seizing the assets, they surely will not be in a position to recover all the money due. And if creditors push towards an asset seizure, or if they push towards enforcing debt covenants, it is not going to be good for them as well, because creditors are not in a position to recover all the money which they have lent to us simply by liquidating the business. So in order to avoid such a situation, which is going to be bad for creditors as well as for us, it's essential that we keep the creditors informed and seek their approval before taking on additional debt, especially if additional debt leads to a breach of debt covenants. That's what I've highlighted in my first point. And moving on to the second point, when we borrow the stipulated amount of money, which comes up to $3 billion, as I mentioned earlier, we should seek approval from creditors. And when after we have sought approval, we have to sign new agreements, and we should also consent to modifying the existing gearing threshold. So the existing gearing threshold is 43%. So after we negotiate with our creditors, then we should sign new agreements. And when signing these new agreements, we should take steps to modify the existing gearing threshold. So this 43% ceiling should be moved up to something like 45% or higher. Then we need not worry about taking on additional debt amounting to $3 billion. And also, when conducting these negotiations with the creditors, we have to think in terms of how the company has fared previously in the previous year 2025, as well as the year before it, in the year 2024, how we have fared, how we have maintained our gearing ratio. So the pre-investment gearing is 41% as per our financial statements. So let me direct your attention towards the financial statements. So if you look at the gearing ratio, you can see the gearing ratios concerning the years 2024 and 2025. So the gearing ratio in the year 2025 was 41%, and in the year 2024, the gearing ratio used to be 42%. So the pre-investment gearing was 41% in the year 2025. All right. So we have taken this point from the pre-seed. So this is how you get marks for pre-seed application. So the pre-investment gearing is 41%, which is still near the debt covenant ceiling, or the covenant ceiling, which comes up to 43%. And if you look at the performance in the year 2024, we were successful when our gearing was near the ceiling in the year 2024, because the gearing in 2024 used to be 42%, and we were operating near the covenant ceiling, which was 43%. Still, we didn't face any hiccups, which shows the fact that we as a company, we have been successful even when our gearing was near the ceiling as per our existing debt covenants. So these debt covenants, it appears that it works as a hindrance rather than actually showing the fact that we are a risky business, because whenever lending money, some creditors want to deal with a company which is seen as less risky. That is why they come up with these type of debt covenants. However, due to these debt covenants, if our future growth is impacted negatively, it is better to get in touch with these creditors and rework these debt covenants. And when reworking these debt covenants, we have to say something to persuade the creditors to ease the covenant terms. That's exactly what I've highlighted in my next point. So we have to persuade creditors to ease covenant terms. So when persuading these creditors, what should we say? We should highlight the fact that this new investment leads to increased equity and cash flows, because as per what's highlighted within this scenario, if we opt for this escrow arrangement, we are in a position to share our technology with third parties without any hiccups, without impacting our intellectual property adversely. So this is highlighted in the second section of this mock exam. We have innovated something, and we have the opportunity of sharing this innovation with our competitors. But when sharing this innovation, we have to be conversant about how we should manage our intellectual property or safeguard our intellectual property. If not, we are poised to lose our competitive advantage. By sharing this technology, we are poised to generate additional returns in the future. And in order to safeguard our intellectual property, the board has sought out services offered by escrow management providers. That's why a quotation provided by We Escrow appears within the third section of this mock exam. So this new investment leads to increased equity and cash flows, and also this leads to increased revenues. And when we are getting additional business on top of what we are seeing right now, when we are opening a new income stream, then this reduces the risk of defaults. So as I mentioned earlier, debt covenants are arranged by creditors with the intention of reducing the risk of default, to make sure that a company is not taking on too much loans. Because if a company takes on too much loans, and if the company is not generating enough cash flows on a daily basis, this might lead to defaults. So in order to avoid defaults, creditors force companies to sign debt covenants. So when we go down this route, when we are borrowing $3 billion with the intention of utilizing services provided by escrow providers, which will ensure that we will benefit by sharing our technology, which leads to increased revenues in the future. These revenues will ensure that we can easily pay the loan interests as well as the loan installments on time without any hiccups, which reduces the risk of default. So this point should be utilized when we are trying to persuade creditors to ease covenant terms. And also we can opt for debt restructuring. Debt restructuring is a situation where we negotiate a loan with more favorable terms. So this again reduces the risk of covenant breaches. So when we opt for debt restructuring, we reach out to our existing lenders and say and tell them and ask them to extend the loan period, or we ask for a grace period, for instance, or we ask for a reduction in loan interest. So all these things comprise of a debt restructuring process. So when we opt for a debt restructuring, we are trying to negotiate a loan with more favorable terms. It could be a situation where the loan interest is reduced. It could be a situation where we get a grace period, or it could be a situation where the term of the loan or the time over which we should make the loan installment payments are extended. So when we opt for debt restructuring, it reduces the risk of covenant breach. And this is good for creditors because if we repay the creditors with the intention of managing or falling in line with the debt covenant of 43%, gearing of 43%, if we try to settle the existing loans, it is not good for creditors. So sometimes with the intention of falling in line with debt covenants, companies try to settle amounts due with creditors when opting for additional loans. So when this happens, it is not too good for creditors. Why is this the case? Creditors make money by lending money to someone, and they benefit from the loan interests. And when a company, let's assume that we have signed an agreement to opt for a non-current liability, or opt for a long-term loan which spans across 5 years. So rather than paying the loan across 5 years, when we take steps to settle the loan after 2 years, it is not too beneficial for the creditors because they lose interest income. So when we restructure the loan, we are not trying to repay the loan faster. Instead, we are trying to extend the loan if possible. Then the creditors are going to benefit, given the fact that they are not going to lose interest income, because if we repay early, then these creditors or banks are going to lose interest income. So if we restructure the loans, then they are not in a position to lose interest income, which is good for the creditors. And on the other hand, it is good for Cewmlator or ourselves as well, because if we opt for early repayments, creditors will seek penalties. So we can avoid early repayment penalties by restructuring our loans. And also, this leads to a situation where we are in a position to relax the gearing constraints. So we can, although the existing covenant rate is 43%, a gearing of 43%, when we negotiate with our creditors and when we opt for debt restructuring, we can extend this to something which goes above 43%. So we can agree on something like 45 to 46%, which will ensure that we can opt for this additional loan amounting to $3 billion. If we are in a position to seek this additional loan, then we can fund this investment tied to the escrow software. And when we are in a position to fund this investment, we are in a position to share our technology with third parties, which will result in additional revenue streams in the future. All right, so that's how you should structure your answer, or that's what you should cover in your answer when your knowledge concerning debt covenants are tested. So I explained the theoretical concept or the philosophy behind debt covenants, and also I explained what we need to do to manage relationships with creditors by looking at multiple angles. And also I made sure to bring in information as and when necessary from the pre-scene, and I've also made sure to align this answer with the information presented in the unseen. So as I mentioned earlier, in the earlier webinars, I mentioned the fact that you get marks for theory as well as application. Just because you write a highly theoretical answer, you're not going to get marks. If you explained what debt covenants are, you are going to get 0 marks. Instead, it is all about applying the knowledge about debt covenants, considering what's highlighted within the unseen when developing the answer. So as my first point, I said that we should not violate debt covenants, and I've also highlighted what we might face, what ourselves, Cewmlator, as well as creditors might face if we violate debt covenants. I said that the creditors are going to opt for asset seizures, and they will force a company dissolution. And when doing so, it is going to impact us adversely, as well as the creditors might be impacted adversely, given the fact that they are not in a position to recover all the cash due. And also, given this point, I mentioned the fact that when borrowing this additional money, we have to seek approval from our creditors. And I've also mentioned what we should include when conducting negotiations. We should highlight the fact that we have operated close to the ceiling of 43% in the years 2024 and 2025. However, we have not faced any financial issues within the company, which shows the fact that these gearing constraints are not actually benefiting us financially. And also I've mentioned what we need to do to persuade creditors to ease the covenant terms. So we should highlight why this additional debt is going to be beneficial for the company. And also we should seek debt restructuring, which is going to be beneficial for both Cewmlator as well as creditors, because creditors will not lose interest income if we opt to settle amounts due early. Rather than doing so, we are trying to, via a restructuring process, we are trying to extend the time period of the loan, which will ensure that the creditors are going to benefit from additional interest income. And also it's good for Cewmlator as well, because in order to fall in line with these covenant terms, we might have to settle dues with certain creditors. When doing so, these creditors are going to charge us early settlement penalties. So if we restructure these loans, we are in a position to avoid these early settlement penalties. And also we are in a position to relax the gearing constraint. So we are in a position to increase our gearing to something above 45%. All right. So that's how you should structure your answer. And the final point or the final step as per our answering technique is to expand the answer plan in paragraph form. You should expand the entire answer plan in paragraph form within 20 to 25 minutes. And you are supposed to develop a paragraph per answer point. And therefore, your final answer should look something like this. So as you can see, my entire answer is in paragraphs, not in bullet points. These bullet points are there, or this answer plan is there to help you plan out your answer or structure your answer, or figure out whether you are developing an answer which is totally aligned with the requirement or not. Once you have planned out your answer, your final answer should be in paragraph form. So based on the number of points you have included in your answer, you need to come up with the same number of paragraphs. So if you decided to include 7 points within your answer plan, in your final answer, there should be 7 different paragraphs. All right, so that's what I wanted to highlight. I hope you gained a good understanding of how to deal with a question to do with debt covenants. And I'm going to share, as I mentioned earlier, I will share a link to a previous F3 workshop, which I conducted about a month back, in which I've covered a question tied to financing options or debt and equity. Having said that, let me quickly tell you what we offer at TCS. So I'm on the SCS page. If you are yet to create a free user account, click on this button and create one. I'm sorry, I have not logged into the system. So I'm going to pause the recording for a while so that I can log into the system. All right, so if you are yet to create a free user account, click on this button and create one. Once you have done it successfully, you would gain access to our student dashboard. Click on this button and click on My Courses to gain access to the study resources. In front of SCS Free, you would see an Access Content button. Click on it. Once you have clicked on it, you would gain access to the recorded versions of the weekly webinars and workshops we conduct. I said that the answering and time management techniques were explained in depth in the 3rd webinar. So you can watch it via our exam platform. And in last week's webinar, I explained stress management techniques, and also I shared a study plan with you. I explained what you need to do in the upcoming weeks in order to score extremely good marks at your exam. So you can watch all these videos free of charge via our student dashboard. And under the study material tab, you'd gain access to the pre-seen mind map and the answer plan of mock exam 1. And under the mocks tab, you'd gain access to the questions and suggested answers of mock exam 1. And via the exams tab, you have the opportunity of attempting mock exam 1 under exam conditions via TCS's exam platform. As you know, we have developed an exam platform which is the exact replica of the Pearson VUE system on which you'd attempt your real examination. So this is the best way to practice your answering time management and stress management answering time management and stress management techniques rather under exam conditions via our exam platform. So make use of these free resources on offer by creating a free account. And if you are interested in investing on our paid content, click on this button and check the sample material before you do so. And if you are yet to join our SCS discussion forum, WhatsApp discussion forum, click on this button and join it. Via this group, we will keep you guys informed of the weekly webinar or workshop commencement dates and times. And we are sharing codes of free resources. And also, if you have any questions, you can get them answered instantaneously via this WhatsApp group. And talking about what we offer two packages, the essential course and the premium course. The essential course is designed for those who are coming through the OTQ route or those who are coming through the CIMA general route. So since you have completed your E3, P3 and F3 OTQs, you have already learned theory. So when conducting preparations for this exam, it is simply about improving your application skills. So under the essential course, we have made available the recordings of all weekly webinars and workshops, 6 mock exams with suggested answers. Although it says 6 mocks, you actually have access to 7 mock exams in total. We have developed an additional mock exam with the prime intention of covering all syllabus areas. As I mentioned earlier, we have made sure to cover 63 subtasks in total within these mock exams. You will gain access to pre-scene analysis videos. Once you have watched these videos, you will gain an in-depth understanding of the internals and externals of your chosen company, Cewmlator. You'd also gain access to the annotated pre-scene industry and financial analysis slides. Let me quickly show you what these resources look like. So as you can see, as part of these annotations, we have summarized the entire pre-scene, and also we have conducted our own analysis. And based on this analysis, we have indicated probable exam scenarios and probable syllabus elements which can be tested. And when developing our mock exams, we have made sure to cover the same points across the 7 mocks which we have developed. And also we have conducted an industry analysis by focusing on 4 main elements. In the first part, we have defined the industry. In the second part, we have explained about the competitive dynamics within your chosen industry. And in the third part, we have explained about industry trends. Based on these industry trends, scenarios will be thrown at you at your real exam. And towards the very end, considering 2 real-life companies, we have explained how these companies operate within your chosen industry. And also, via the financial analysis slides, by going through them, you will gain an in-depth understanding of what appears within each financial statement. And also we have conducted a ratio analysis with the prime intention of comparing Cewmlator's performance against its closest competitor, Atoms. So you will gain access to all these resources via the essential course. Also, you'd gain access to a case, the top 20 likely issue slides, which indicate the most probable scenarios which can be tested. The case study familiarization kit will explain the technicalities behind the SCS exam. You will also gain access to a tutor managed live chat and OTQ revision cards. So after attempting each mock exam, if you feel that you need to brush up your knowledge, if you feel that you have forgotten a certain conceptual element, don't waste time to go through bulky study texts or your old study notes. Simply refer to the OTQ revision cards. In a jiffy, you are in a position to brush up your knowledge concerning each conceptual element covered within our mock exams. So the essential course is priced at £299. And talking about the premium course comes with a pass guarantee. And this is intended for those who are coming through the exemption routes, as well as those who had failed the exam previously. So both these sets of students have the same problem. There are gaps in theory knowledge and issues with application. So with the intention of teaching you each conceptual element and also highlighting how you should deal with application, we have included some additional resources under the premium course on top of what appears under essential. So under premium, you'd gain access to the online mock exam platform on which you can attempt all mock exams under exam conditions, which is the best way to practice your answering, time management, and stress management techniques. You will gain access to answer plans of all mock exams. You saw how beneficial answer plans are, especially when it comes to learning theory and application. And at the same time, when we are revising, you are supposed to try and replicate the same type of points when you are redeveloping your answer plans. So you can easily figure out whether you are capable of structuring your answers properly when you have access to these answer plans, which we have developed focused on each mock exam. You also gain access to 15 masterclasses in total. So a while back, you saw how we conduct our masterclasses. Our masterclasses are 100% aligned with the mock exams. So whilst teaching you the logic behind each answer, we are also teaching you the theoretical concept covered within each mock exam, along with how to deal with application. So the best way to learn theory and application is to watch these masterclasses. And also you'd gain access to one-on-one tutor feedback focused on mocks 3 and 5. So let me quickly show you the type of feedback on offer at TCS. As you can see, we have evaluated each and every point in depth, with the intention of making sure that you understand what your shortcomings are. If your logic is not sound, we have highlighted all these problems, all these issues as part of these annotations, with the intention of making sure that you understand your shortcomings, because when you understand your shortcomings, you can take steps to overcome them when you are redeveloping answer plans or when you are conducting revision. So you can see throughout this answer script the type of feedback we have provided to the student. And at the very end, we have indicated mark allocations on a subtask by subtask basis. We have not just indicated the mark allocations, we have also indicated the success rate. By looking at this success rate, you can easily figure out the subtasks in which your performance was substandard. So this student ended up scoring just 32 marks for this mock exam. That is why you can see that in all the subtasks, this student has failed to achieve the threshold of 54%. So once you receive this type of feedback, you will understand your shortcomings. And when it comes to redeveloping answer plans, you can take steps to fix these problems when conducting revision. And when you have access to all these resources, you will pass for sure. That is why we are offering a pass guarantee. So if you invest on premium and end up failing, you will gain access to the premium course in your subsequent sitting free of charge. However, the pass guarantee is only available to those who sit for the exam and score between 70 to 79 marks. So if you stick to this process, you can easily pass. That is why we are offering a pass guarantee under the premium course. So the premium course is priced at £599, which can be paid in 2 installments of £299 each. Or if you opt to pay in full, you can save £100 each. So the price is just £499. So you can invest on your preferred course by clicking on either of these buttons. And let me quickly take you to the study plan, which is accessible via the website. Most of you are sticking to our original 8-week study plan. I shared an alternative 6-week study plan last week. So some of you are sticking to our original 8-week study plan. If you're on the study plan, we are in week number 5. Within this week, you are supposed to master mock number 4 by sticking to our 3-step approach. So you are supposed to practice your answering time management and stress management techniques under exam conditions when attempting mock number 4. Then learn theory and application by watching masterclasses, and then cement your knowledge, conduct revision by redeveloping answer plans on your own. Once you have redeveloped your answer plans, compare your fresh answer plans to TCS's to further refine your understanding of how you should structure your answers and how you should approach each syllabus area. All right. So that's what we offer at TCS. And those who stuck to our study process achieved a sure pass in the exams which happened in August 2025. That is why we achieved a 91% pass rate. So you can achieve similar success if you stick to the study plan, stick to the 3-step process when it comes to mastering each mock exam, because by the time you are done with all 6 mocks, you will be conversant about each conceptual element. You will be conversant about how each syllabus area can be tested at the exam. You will also be conversant about how to structure your answers, how to deal with application appropriately. When you know these things, you are never going to run out of time at your exam. You will structure your answers appropriately. Therefore, you are poised to score 90 plus marks easily at the examination. So it all comes down to your discipline. If you stick to our study plans, your real job is to, as per our 3-step process, your real job is to attempt the mock exam. To do so, you have to find 3 hours of study time. And then after attempting each mock exam, you are supposed to conduct revision on your own, which is going to take 1.5 hours of your time. Everything else is handled by us. So you need not worry about learning theory and application. We are teaching you both these elements, theory and application, via our master classes. You need not worry about syllabus coverage. We have covered each syllabus area via the mock exams, which we have shared with you. As I mentioned earlier, we have covered 63 subtasks in total. When you have access to all these resources, and when you stick to a disciplined process when it comes to mastering each mock exam, you can pass for sure. All right. So having said that, I'm moving to the Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can switch on your mic and talk, or drop a message via the chat. I think some questions have come through. Eric is asking a question. Can you send us the final answer with paragraphs for each point on email? Eric, actually speaking, you have access to these resources via the student dashboard. So as I mentioned earlier, if you look at, so I took you through mock exam 1. So it comes with our resources include the questions as well as the suggested answers, which are in paragraph form, along with the answer plans. So we are not just sharing questions and suggested answers, we are also sharing answer plans with you. And the answer plans can be downloaded via the study material tab. I hope I addressed your concern, Eric. Anything else, folks? So since one of you, I think it was, yes, it was Eric. So since Eric was asking about the suggested answers, probably you're trying to figure out how to link the answer plans with suggested answers. I will explain it as well. So as you can see, I've mentioned the fact that we should not violate covenants without approval from creditors, because the breach of covenants leads to an immediate return of funds. We are supposed to return our funds immediately to our creditors, and with the intention of raising the money, the creditors will opt for asset seizures, which in turn will lead to a company dissolution. So that's exactly what you can see in here. Under no conditions should Cewmlator violate its debt covenants without securing approval from the creditors that set these stipulations. So that's my first point, should not violate covenants without approval from creditors. And then, should Cewmlator fail to adhere to these covenants, creditors are entitled to demand the immediate return of borrowed funds, a scenario that could lead to asset seizure and potentially result in company's dissolution. So that's exactly what is highlighted here. Breach of covenants lead to immediate return of funds, which in turn leads to asset seizures and company dissolution. And looking at the second point, or the second paragraph rather, Cewmlator could present the argument to its lenders that enforcing these covenants may not be in their best interest, given the potential negative publicity from shutting down the company and the likelihood that liquidating Cewmlator's assets would only cover a minor portion of their outstanding debts. That's exactly what's highlighted in here. Cewmlator can explain the issues of enforcing debt covenants, which leads to negative publicity from shutting down the company, and liquidating assets might only cover a small portion of outstanding debts. So it's actually the same points. It's simply a matter of connecting these each of these points with the intention of developing a paragraph. So that's why I said that you should develop the answer plan on the answer screen itself. Because when this is the case, when you are finalizing your answer, it's simply a matter of getting rid of the bullet points and linking up of all the points, which makes your life easy when it comes to finalizing your answer. You need not type your final answer from scratch. Instead, utilize the existing answer plan, add some words with the intention of combining these points, and develop a paragraph per answer point. You can gain a good understanding of how to do this when you go through our mock exams, because as I mentioned earlier, our mocks come with the questions, suggested answers, as well as answer plans. Anything else? Eric is saying, please circulate the recording as soon as you can. Yes, Eric, I will definitely do so. After it is up, I will share it via the WhatsApp group. Much appreciated your time and dedication. Sure thing, Eric. All right, seems like there aren't anything else. And also, you can download this document via the free and paid courses. This is the pre-scene mind map. We have summarized the entire pre-scene within a PDF. So go through this PDF on a daily basis to constantly keep yourself reminded of the most important points highlighted within your pre-scene. And if you want to contact us, you can do it via our website, which is www.study@tcs.com. Visit our website and click on the contact button and drop us a message. Our admin staff will get in touch with you via email during office hours, or you can simply email us directly at info@study@tcs.com. Or if you need instantaneous personalized support, drop us a message on this WhatsApp number. And I urge you to follow us on our social media handles, especially YouTube and TikTok, because the recorded versions of the weekly webinars and workshops will be uploaded to our YouTube handle. And via TikTok, you'd gain access to 6 videos, which is essentially the pre-scene mind map in TikTok form. So on a daily basis, for instance, on your way to office, keep watching these TikTok videos over and over with the intention of cementing your knowledge about what appears within your pre-scene. And if you're yet to read our blog post, which we have developed focused on Cewmlator, please visit our blog page and read the blog post which we have shared with you. So having said that, it brings us to the end of this masterclass. I hope you gain an in-depth understanding of what the F3 syllabus is all about and how you should structure your answers appropriately, or tackle a question to do with debt covenants. And a similar masterclass was conducted in the previous session, which was focused on financing options. After this session, via the WhatsApp group, I will share the recorded version as I promised previously. And most importantly, if you sat for the exams which happened in November 2025, your results will be out this Thursday. So make sure to check your results, and I will be highlighting what you need to do to rebound from a failure in the next workshop, which is happening next Saturday at 10 GMT or 10 AM UK. So thank you very much for joining. If you have already started your preparations, please stick to the study plans which we have shared with you. If you are yet to start prep, you have enough and more time to pass in February 2026. So start right now, start from tomorrow, start from Monday. Stick to the three-step process when mastering each mock exam, because you have something like 5.5 to 6, or actually speaking 6 weeks at your disposal. That is enough and more time to master each mock exam on a weekly basis. So I hope to see you guys next week. Until then, take care and thank you for joining.